Right, we're on. Richard Briggs, welcome to the Luke Farr Show, a show to motivate, educate, and inspire our next generation of leaders. And you've certainly been leading the way in many different facets. But thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Luke. Pleasure to be here.
I guess first things first, just to sort of start sort of warmly into it. We don't need to jump straight in just yet with the high level questions. But how's things been going? We've had the global pandemic. It's been very interesting times. What have you learned anything about yourself during these tough times? Just run us through what's been happening.
Well, I was chief executive at council when they had the first lockdown, which was an experience in itself. I was lucky to have a really effective team, but I guess one of the things that I sort of learned, and it probably led to me branching out to do my own thing, was a number of businesses in the community had this philosophy that a handout from the government was resilience. And I have this view that, well, basically a handout is just a stopgap measure, and you have to do a whole lot more and drive a whole lot harder to be resilient. So one of the things I've learned is that there's a lot of organisations out there and individuals out there that probably weren't ready. I don't necessarily know if I was ready or not, but I was lucky to have a government job, so that sort of buffered me quite a lot.
Right.
So yeah, really learned a lot about what makes people tick, and also, I've learned that I don't mind being at home. So,
right. So in essence, it suited you just fine, mate.
Yeah. So I'm a reasonably gregarious personality, but I'm actually an introvert, and so being at home was quite fun. And I guess the other thing I sort of learned was that the New Zealand psyche has probably had a huge hit as a consequence of, and this is not a government bashing statement, but it's probably a global bashing statement, just the sheer nature of management of the pandemic, right? And
bash away, Richard, bash away.
Yeah, just of these observations that, people's individual resilience, not necessarily business resilience, individual resilience is being sucked out of them. And I actually think the communities are angrier in general than they've ever been. I'm not talking about the zealots one side of the fence or the other, anti-vaxxers or pro-vaxxers and all this sort of stuff, or those that are against lockdowns and whatnot. But there's less tolerance out there as well. So observations from my end that's and my partner Julia shares the same thing. We just observe. We go out down to get a bottle of milk. It feels different. I really think this is going to have a long-term impact on New Zealand.
Do you think around that, so you don't think we're going to come out of this as a kinder society and more empathetic? You can see this already brewing, and it's been happening for the last 2 years.
I think we would have come out kinder last time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, first lockdown, come out of that, if that was it, and there's no control over, a pandemic effectively, even though we try to control it and eliminate it, I think we were kinder at that point. And that would have been a nice place for some smart guy out there to come along with a really cool vaccine that just annihilated it. But I think the toing and froing in and out of lockdown, the clarity or lack thereof of various aspects, what we're doing with the borders, the economic impact, people are fed up, and that's translating. And even it's even not people that are fed up. I mean, I don't know what it's like with you and how many times you've found yourself being frustrated having a conversation with someone via this mechanism, via a video conferencing, right? Whereas in the past, when you're actually with someone who can not necessarily feel their breath, maybe smell their bad breath, but when you're actually close to someone, you can build rapport. I call it like rapport credits. You sort of work with someone.
Yeah, rapport credits. I like that. That's a good.
You sort of end up building this national. But if you and I to build a rapport, we'll probably have one that'll survive a podcast. We'll probably have one that'll survive a few conversations. If you and I were doing heavy business, I actually think it would be detrimental to the outcome because we haven't actually pressed flesh or, really got to know each other. And I've noticed when I was at council before I left there, a lot of staff were getting really anxious during video conferences and not having that ability to actually, connect with their colleagues, and work was suffering as a consequence. I mean, they're really well, don't get me wrong, but, and I think that's just indicative of all organisations as well. So post, all this sort of stuff, there's going to have to be, I think, some real significant interventions. And I think the government has a responsibility as well to actually remedy some of these long-term impacts.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, some great points raised there. I mean, have you? You're a CEO of Hamilton City Council there for 9 years. It's a long time. I mean, you came from Fonterra, commercial manager there for 7, and then now into your own consultancy. I mean, you would have dealt with, so many different key stakeholders and a range of different personalities and things. Were you always a natural, people person? Or, I mean, because you're an accountant, more CFO by trade, weren't you? So generally those two don't really talk to each other. I've dealt with many accountants in my time, and they tend to be more introverted than extroverted. I'm sure there's the anomaly, but are you the anomaly out of that stereotype?
I'm not an anomaly. I'm not an anomaly. I probably a couple of years ago when I was auditing, I was a government auditor. I had the most exciting job ever. I audited the government's books, right? And bloody hell, I couldn't sit at my desk. I had to go talk to people. And that was probably the first boundary pushing opportunity, is when you got to go talk to someone. And you get 2 types of clients when you're a government auditor. You get one client, like staff, that think you're a dick, right? There's no one really likes you, but I think you're a dick. Then those are those ones that think you're a dick, want to have some fun with you. And so you end up having to have a really good sense of humor. I mean, I was auditing a little company on the east coast of the North Island, right? We show up to the audit. I was green as, I was like 20, probably 19, maybe straight out of varsity. Yeah. And they set me up to do the audit in a caravan. So I was sitting in this caravan, one of those workers, it was a roading company, one of those, smoko caravans that they take around.
Right, lavish, yeah.
Yeah, lavish. They tidied it up. They got rid of the tea bags, put a desk in there, and they got like a Wi-Fi cable through the window. Not even Wi-Fi, a Cat5 cable through the window.
But no beer fridge. That's concerning.
Yeah, actually, I don't think there was internet back there. It was so far ago. But I was sitting in it, and next thing, one of the guys drops a screwdriver through the door lock, locks me in there. They hook me up to a car, and they tow me into the town, and then unhook me, pull the screwdriver out, and there I was in my suit in a town that was predominantly, primary industry orientated, and there's this guy standing in the main street wearing a suit.
They've got their swan dry on, and
they did. Everyone was wearing a red and black swan dry.
Wow.
So I learned through experiences like that I had to toughen up. So that was the first experience. The second thing is, for the last 10, 15 years, I've been really focused on my state of mind to the extent that it's almost like I don't plan to be an introvert or an extrovert. What I plan to be is the most effective version of myself to get the job done. And so I know that for me to achieve my outcomes, I've got to be able to network, I've got to be able to build credibility, and I've got to be able to influence. So to do that, I've got to behave in a certain way. And so even having conversations like this with you, how do I behave in a way that when I walk away, you describe me as a certain thing? Well, not that I'm ever going to ask you. If I do ask you, you might tell me the truth thing with Dick. But I know
what you mean. Well, I'm not going to describe you in any way. I mean, you're live now, and people can make their own interpretation up because
that's right. There might be a whole of it, but the theory is that you work out, and it's up to you, and it's personal. But you work out what your goals are, and even work out what your purpose is, and where you're heading, what you're trying to achieve. Then how do you honour that? How do you drive that? And I'm not one for, when there's mindset, a lot of people talk about, mindset like it's some sort of Jedi trick where you're trying to lift the X-Wing out of the swamp and Yoda's on the side giving you, motivation. It's, it's really simple. Like, when I was at City Council, one of my, I had a 3-word set, which was, I wanted to be perceived as strategic, driven and relentless. Right? And every Sunday I'd look at my diary and I'd look at my 5 key meetings. I had 100 meetings a week, right? It was full on, but there's 5 meetings that would make a difference to the community. And I'd say to myself, how do I need to behave in those meetings? When I walk away, they consider that I'm being strategic, driven, and relentless. Because if I'm perceived as doing that, it's more likely they'll buy into my ambitions for the city and the community, and therefore contribute to those outcomes. And that's what I did. And so as a consequence, I had to act a certain way. It wasn't that I wasn't introverted anymore. I had to be on every meeting to deliver those outcomes. So that was evolution in the last 10 to 15 years, away from just.
So that was that more nurture than nature though?
That was more nurture. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. That was. And to be fair, there's a lot of people. Like, I'm not a big fan of like Myers-Briggs and all those psychometric testing where. And I'm a fan of the science, but I'm not a fan of how people deal with them afterwards. So what happens generally when people get that testing done is they will go, hey, I'm an introvert. That explains why I act this way. Whereas I go, hey, I'm an introvert, but I'm not going to get what I've got to get done being an introvert. I've got to be outgoing to be driven. I've got to be, on my game to be strategic. I've got to be absolutely focused on outcomes to be relentless, and so my whole philosophy is you've got to really think, and it's not about being someone you're not. So there's probably nature in there as well, but you've got to dial those attributes up, because everyone's got, all of your listeners, they have millions of different attributes in themselves. You just got to be disciplined about picking the ones that are the most appropriate and dialing them up for that situation. And it works. And it worked for me for council for 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very good insights there. I mean, Richard, who do you look up to as a leader, and what do you think makes them a great leader? Obviously, you've been through that leadership capacity, but we always have our own mentors. Who are some of yours?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I've sort of more developed a network. I wouldn't call them mentors, but good close friends that are very ambitious, very driven, wanting to get stuff done. I don't like hanging out with people, and that's why I love hanging out with my partner Julia. I don't like hanging out with people that glass half empty. There's always an opportunity, and so some of the people I look up to, there's a guy I work with, and we brought his program into council about high performance leadership. A guy called Craig Steele. Significant respect for him. Sharp as, gets that mindset stuff. I've learned all my mindset training through him. So he's great.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but can we just delve into that just while we're on that topic? Just a couple of key learnings that you've got out of that mindset training, and what was some tangible takeaways that'd be great for the audience?
Well, there's probably So probably it's firstly understanding what makes people tick, and it comes down to in Craig's program that he runs, or which is his company's called Steel Performance Solutions. Is very about individuals are driven by their relevance, right? And so that really helps understand when you're engaging with people, what's causing them to drive that way. And it was very, very relevant for me as a chief executive with 13 employers who were elected members, and they want to be relevant. And once I understood what made them relevant, what in their own mind, I could adapt my approach to actually support them achieving those outcomes. So, the previous chief executives were, the one prior to me, brilliant bloke, absolutely brilliant bloke, one of the leaders I did look up to. But other ones tried to be an elected member. They tried to be political, and and chief executives in local government have a bad rep because there's a few ones out there that behave in ways that is very political rather than being independent and objective. So by understanding what elected members stood for, and it's not just about getting re-elected. I mean, what drives them, where they're coming from, it enabled me to be a far better chief executive, because I could coach my team on how to support that elected member better and so forth, and understand how they're going to contribute to the community. So that part of it. The other part of Craig's program is that basically you're only limited by your ambition, right? And that I learnt from him was that absolute desire to be as strategically ambitious as possible, right? And throw that ball right out there. And that translated at council to me being mildly annoying, and that quite a few of my general managers would come to me and say, "Hey, I've achieved this." And I'd go, "That's great, but why don't you do this or that, or dial this up or dial that down? Why do you think about this?" And it was mildly deflating.
Right, yeah, just constantly challenging people as opposed to just patting them on the back. Because there's always more on the tank, right?
Well, they show up thinking they delivered a 10, and I say, "Oh, that's about a 5. What would a 10 look like?" And it's mildly deflating. You know what?
But that, Richard, that's a perception play. It's a 10 in their mind. It's a 5 in yours. So it's about finding that middle ground, right? To be like, right, well, how we both achieve these expectations that are on par with both of us.
Yeah, but I can quote. I rated myself, and this is not from an arrogance point of view. I've just been around long enough to understand what some of the consequences are. And one of the things you get as a chief executive is that view of the battlefield. Battlefield sounds like it's a war, but of the playing field. The view of the playing field, you get to see every single moving part, right? Every single moving part. So I had the ability to join dots, and that dot made the difference between a 5 and a 10. So one of the things I learned from Craig is the ability to join the dots across the playing field, and by leveraging, and a big theoretical view that he held, or probably philosophical view, is around leadership. It's about influence. So how do you do what you're doing to be the best you can to influence others to be the best they can, but how do you make sure that best they can purports to drive forward your strategy? And so what I've done in my time at council and being ambitious is I've got other people on board. No one wants to hang out with someone that's not ambitious. And I was lucky enough to be supported by a really good group of general managers. So I could go out and build relationships with central government agencies, developers, and so forth, and just keep throwing the ball out. Just keep throwing the ball out.
What was it there? There's some great learnings in there. What was it in for you though? Where'd the fire in your belly come from? And essentially, what was the why? What was the purpose? What made you so ambitious initially?
At first, I wasn't right. I am really disappointed. I don't sort of come across probably Craig's philosophies, but also probably my own self-awareness earlier. Right, I would have been far more ahead of my life in certain respects, right? Whether it's contentment or whatever it looks like. But where it comes from me, I'm one for finding a purpose that really drives you. And when some of the coaching I'm talking about with some of my mentees or coachees is what is the purpose of what you're doing. And I've got a whole lot of clients that are hoping kicking off in the new year who want to know how they can launch a product into local government, right? And that's hopefully I can pull some of that off, which would be great. But they want to do it as a revenue source, but that's not going to articulate well with local government, who have this view about improving the community. So my conversation, I'm getting to the point about what drives me, but for them, for these clients, what difference will their product make, right? And so when I was the chief executive at council, I want to know what difference I could make and why was I going to make that difference. So I had a personal purpose to build an organisation that could improve the wellbeing of Hamiltonians. And I stuck to it religiously. Everything I did, it wasn't something that someone will measure me and say, hey, have you got that organisation
when
yet?
You say Hamiltonians, how are they different to the rest of New Zealand, just for everyone out there? Is there
mainly because they were
a certain percentage of Hamiltonians?
Yeah, legislatively, they were my responsibility. So Hamiltonians were selected not because they're any different, but legislatively, as the chief executive, I had a responsibility to them. So right. But having said that, I dialed it up. And basically, my philosophy was that what was good for New Zealand was good for Hamilton. What was good for Hamilton was good for New Zealand. And so basically, I held that really tightly. And I used my purpose almost like a shield when I was attacked, and like a sword when I had to go in and try and get things done. I mean, I remember one time when I was doing my first big restructure at council, not many people getting laid off, but shuffling things around quite differently to what other councils were doing. And I got questioned by a member of the media, how are you going to explain to the community yet another round of restructuring? And my response was pretty clear, was, hey, it's my purpose to build an organisation that's going to improve the wellbeing of Hamiltonians. Don't make no apology for that. So it gave me a reference point to actually stand with confidence with where I was going. And so that's quite powerful. So if you've got a purpose that's about making money, that's not a purpose, that's an outcome. Find something that's absolutely can be influenced. And one of the things I do is a reverse conversation with someone, hopefully plan to do. We're not talking to Julia, it's what I plan to do. But like for example, if you stuff your job up, so if your whole organisation does a completely shit job, right? How bad could it be for your community that you're involved with? And that's a really good example, because like I was pitching to a legal firm the other day. If they don't do their job properly, it's going to impact on criminal charges for people, probably GDP impact on businesses, all this sort of stuff. So therefore, if you do a really bad job and give really bad advice, in reverse, if you did really good and made really good contributions, you actually improve the community. So community. So Julie, my partner, and I have a goal to improve the wellbeing of 100,000 people in the next 2 years. That's our personal goal. That's our purpose, right? Fantastic. And we do everything. Awesome. We do everything we can to drive that.
That's great. I love the selfless approach to that. That's really really nice. As opposed to other people's personal goal. Anything more capitalistic driven. So that just shows the difference. Really, you guys have come on board collaboratively, and you really want to give back.
One of the things
which says a lot about your personality traits and your values and your beliefs.
So once you set an ambitious goal, then the discipline is to set a plan to deliver it, right? And that's when the fun starts. Because then you can go off and you can be as ambitious as you like with your purpose, but then you get really ambitious. Shit, if I want to 100,000 people, how do we do that? What skills do we have? Who do we know? How can we flex this? How can we move that? How can we meet this person? So, we've now formed relationships with other people that we can actually get them to contribute towards that 100,000. So in the end, we may directly benefit 50,000 people or 20,000 people, but we've put in place mechanisms for other people to pick up that gauntlet. So it actually inspires people. They get on board, they align, and they go, right? And so that's where I think New Zealand businesses potentially can fall down. Young leaders need to think about this as well. New leaders is, get that absolute drive and purpose there, so no one can question why you're there. It's almost like your license to engage, right? No one can question it, and just fight it, right? Now, I tell young guys that get your purpose.
I'm sorry to stop you there, Richard. You raising so many great points at the moment. But I mean, with that there, the vision, mission, and purpose. Because especially for the youth out there, there might be quite a disconnect of understanding of actually the definitions of what those three pillars mean. So for you, what are the
So the vision is what it's going to look like when you get there, right?
Right.
Yeah, so vision, what it's going to look like when you get there, right? And the purpose is, what you're there to do. And pretty much your mission is that, through doing what, how are you going to contribute to your vision and your purpose? That's how I look at it, right? I'm going to be the best damn consultant delivering exceptional services to drive better value for my community. That's like your mission. Your vision is my community better value looks like this, and my purpose is I'm going to make this community the best it can be. So, I tend to use vision and mission as sort of like the out there. Vision's the out there, the purpose is the soul, and the mission is sort of like the grease to get the two together to go forward. So that's how I look at it.
Okay.
And yeah. But if you have like a really good purpose, right, and then absolutely focus on it every day, that gives you it gives you the drive to really challenge people. If you're thinking this, how is it, my council role is easy. I'd say to my staff, well, how is that really going to improve the value of the community? What is it going to do? Tell me about it. What is it going to? And okay, so that, again, it comes down. That sounds like a 6. That sounds really good. But hey, if you work with Joe over here in this company, who's got this ambition to do X, Y, and Z, maybe you can make it a 9 between the two of you. So suddenly, it forces you to think about who else can lift it up, who else you can work with. So having it really robustly and beyond challenge, and you've got to be. I do numerous leadership presentations, and one of the things I do is how many people in this room have got a certificate on their wall that have done a leadership course. And I tell them that's not leadership. Leadership is what you do every single day to influence others to propel you towards your strategic outcomes. What are you doing? And that's where relentless in my 3 word set came from. Relentless for me was I never walked past an opportunity to make someone the better version of themselves. So I actively engage with people and find some way that I can empower them to be slightly better through that engagement. And that, once you work out really solidly with discipline and then practice it. No, I mean, I've got a friend of mine who's a former Māori All Black, and I asked him the other day, how did you become a Māori All Black? He said it was luck. I said, well, what did luck look like? Oh, training 70 hours a week, doing this, doing that, and all this sort of stuff. And I said the same thing with leadership, right? There's no luck in leadership. There's no luck in being a world-class rugby player. Hard work. Same thing with leadership. Hard work.
Yep. Hard work.
Yeah, there's no such thing as luck. And just work out a strategy and go for it and hold yourself to account. I've got another friend who posted his ambitions on Instagram, what he wants to achieve. So other people can hold him to account. So there's other ways you can do it, but you've got to take responsibility to go hard.
110%. You mentioned courses there and leadership, leadership certificates and things like that. The things that are on the wall, so to speak. But you went to Wharton School and you did a CEO program, right? Was there any big learnings out of that for you?
A lot about networks, a lot about international trade and global economy.
Was that in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so it was a global chief executive course. It was a third of it was in Shanghai, a third of it was in Barcelona, and a third of it was in Pennsylvania.
Right. So
it was an opportunity to go to 3 different universities. So it was led out of ISA in Barcelona. So that side of things, yeah. One of the things though I did observe though is New Zealand leaders are more ambitious and more driven and are more effective at getting people to follow them than I believe many of the others in the room were. There was
really. What do you think that is?
I've got this strong view around the impact of an Anglo-Saxon military hierarchy as it translates over the years into corporate structures. And a lot of international businesses still follow a very corporate structure, which is very much hierarchical. And so your value is based on your position, whereas in my philosophy, your value is based on your ability to influence others to make the biggest impact you can. And so I think there's a self-limiting factor. And if you've got a hierarchy, you're less likely to have, huge levels of diversity, huge levels of innovation, because what you end up with is people covering their butts, because there's always someone they've got to protect themselves from, right? So if you remove that need to be protected by someone, you say, hey, I trust you, get on with it. As long as you deliver these outcomes, you create a different philosophy, right? And so you should do everything you can, and this is the leaders as well, to value someone by their ability to contribute, and you take responsibility to help them contribute the best they can. You actually find you engender significantly greater levels of loyalty to the strategy, whereas most organisations out there develop loyalty to your manager, which seems to be fraught with issues for me. I'd much rather be loyal to my outcomes and do everything I can to deliver those, rather than be loyal to a person who just wants to look good and get a bigger pay packet. It seems to be disingenuous in my mind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's it's very true. They're loyal to the manager because they feel as though that's the one increasing their pay packet down the path if they exceed X amount of KPIs or whatever. So that's interesting. Hey, Richard, you're gonna either love this segue or hate the segue, but I do have a question for you. Do you use, and completely off topic, but do you use any form of skincare?
Do I use any form of skincare?
You weren't expecting that question on the show, yes.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
In all sincerity, I'm not just buttering you up, but your skin looks pretty good.
Yeah, for someone in his early 70s.
Yeah, but do you or do you not?
Julia, who is my inspiration in business, but also in my grooming, has put me on to. Has put me on to this cheapest chips moisturizer that she's been using for the last 20 odd years from the supermarket, and it's brilliant. And she looks 10 years younger than what she really is, if not 15 years younger. So if it works for her, I'm 20 years behind, so I don't think I'll get the same impact. But she looks amazing, and if I'm passable, and it's the filter I've got on this anyway, it's probably some sort of.
Right. Okay, so perception versus reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's good. No, I mean, the reason I asked you, I mean, I am, this is quite close to home. It's a Hawke's Bay founder who's just started, and she's the sponsor of the show, which is so great to have them on board. Order for G skincare, guys, absolutely amazing.
Look at that.
It's seriously like a, self-activating, lightweight moisturizer made of the power of polyphenols, pomegranate, grapeseed extract, green tea, non-greasy, super light. Some people like it heavier. This is super light, but fantastic for her to be a part of the show and sponsoring the show. And also very big on the environmentally friendly. This packaging is actually made out of sugarcane. That's the reason I absolutely love it as well. So biodegradable. Guys, check it out. www.orderforgskincare.com. Anyway, back to the show, back to Richard. And back to not asking a man what he does for his skincare. But thank you for your response.
I don't think we've been asked that question before, Luke.
No, it's first time for everything. Absolutely. Hey, so let's run through your new venture. What's gonna what are your sort of big expectations coming out of 2022? Have you just launched? Have you got a sort of set client base already based on all of your relationships in the council, or what can we expect?
So I've got a number of executive coaching opportunities lined up, which would be cool. I just love, of all things, I love that the most. It's not necessarily going to be the cornerstone for huge financial success, but I just love seeing the outcomes when people get the confidence in their own abilities and go forward. But also doing some consulting work. I've got a meeting next week on Tuesday to talk to a client. They've got a new product they want to launch into local government, and they want to build an engagement strategy there. And so right in my wheelhouse, which is quite exciting. And I've got a couple of other things in the fires and the irons in the fires, as they say, which I'm working through. But it's I came out this week back on LinkedIn after sort of taking it quietly and slowly winding it up again. So it's interesting. I put out a sort of, hey, like, anyone want to have a chat, and it's been quite fruitful. And you're one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're one of them, Luke.
Not quite the marketing qualified lead that you're expecting, but nonetheless, hey, Richard, who knows the ROI once I post? You never know this audience, but you might get a couple of calls from my loyal Waikato following. So you could be pleasantly surprised. Right.
But I mean, it's been kind of cool just talking to people. Yeah, just talking to people. And one of the things that Julia and I do quite well is we just network. And for her business, and she's more mature in her business than I am, she's doing exceptionally well at just building this really clear and authentic brand. So that's what I'm trying to do, is build a really clear and authentic brand. All about
how do you do that in your opinion?
It's probably really, really clear in terms of the way you post, the way you engage, the way you talk. Like I mentioned before, when I go into meetings, the mindset I've got. So I'm in the process now working out what my corporate mindset is, my new venture, what I'm going to look like. It's almost like a no dicks policy. Like if you're going to be a dick, don't come work with me. I did some marketing prospectus for one of my service lines, which I'm just humming and hawing over. And in there I put, hey, look, this is my way. This is the way I do things. If you don't like it, don't ask. But if you really want to get ahead, I'm a push lawyer, a push accountant now. I'm a push everything. But one of the things I'm really good at is getting the best out of people. I believe I can grow businesses. And so, I want to do it in a way that's authentic to me.
That's awesome. I like that. But I want to touch on that. Don't be a dick. It's like there's a lot of people probably watching this right now. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? Like give us some scenarios about how to not be a dick.
Yeah, well, I just think, again, like one of the things, okay, so for me, a dick is someone that's just totally focused on their pocket, right? It's all well and good to want to be rich, right? But if that's just the end, right? What are you prepared to do to achieve that really worries me, right? But if you have this ambition to make a difference and you're prepared to be a good guy throughout in doing so, that's not a dick. So, Julia and I have talked previously together about clients that, should we take this client on or not? Or she takes client on or not? And they're all just about lowest costs, making the most amount of money themselves. And so for me, there's nothing wrong with trying to be successful financially. But if that's what your outcomes are, you're going to act a certain way. And I would describe that as being a dick. But if you have, I've got a friend who is extremely successful in his business, driven, wants to build the business to be as big as he can, but throughout his journey, he's philanthropic, he's supportive, he shares his story, he shares his wealth with his friends, and so he could be a real mercenary guy that chews people up, spits them out, and gets on with it, but he doesn't. He actually absolutely cares about his staff, his community. So that for me is my value set, and that's how I define a dick. It depends on your value set, right? And so,
yeah. And speaking of value set and belief system, where did that, obviously that would have instilled in your younger years? I mean, what are your key value and core beliefs, and how do you think they've shaped you, Richard, as a person you are today?
I think one of the strongest things I sit with is fairness and equity. Like I describe myself as like a compassionate capitalist. I believe that you got to work hard. You shouldn't be constantly asking for handouts. You should be able to, if you get the opportunity, go ahead. But also, as a compassionate capitalist, if you see an opportunity and potential in someone, you should give them a hand to generate their own returns. So I probably learned that probably predominantly when I was working with Fonterra, and very much around some of the managers I had then. I had some really good managers that were very much focused on, we're going to go hard for the farmer, we're going to make their life as easy as possible, we're going to generate as much return as we can. But it was very much around, doing it honestly and openly. And I've been in situations where I've been negotiating with clients that wanting to pay under the table, or even in some far-flung countries that use services of certain agencies to encourage, foreign traveling men to do business with them and stuff like that. And just the absolute no, get out of my face. We have strong focus on well-being and wholesomeness in this company. We don't buy into that sort of stuff. And so, you sort of learn through working with these people who, are very successful in their jobs, turning over a significant amount of money for one of the largest organizations, in Australasia, and, one of the biggest dairy, just saying no to this stuff. I mean, I know Miles Hurrell not well, but I know, and he's high integrity. And so an organisation that big inspires me, that can actually work on integrity and values. But some of their managers are absolutely brilliant, who just say no to this. Internationally, we're still, I don't know if it's holding, we're still reasonably uncorrupted. And it's quite cool when you were dealing with even bigger companies who have been corrupted, you actually put them in their place as an underdog. Say, no, we don't buy into that stuff. We're just going to do this the good old-fashioned way with honesty and integrity. Thank you very much. So and I learned a lot from that. You can actually get your outcomes by being a nice guy. Don't get me wrong, I'll take the gloves off every now and again, But for the most part, you know,
Great
you find
term.
that
Great term. Take the gloves off, but you're taking them off.
you find a connection with people, right?
Yeah. That's very good. Hey, let's talk. Once again, your insights are invaluable. Let's talk discipline and personal development just very quickly before we wrap up. But on a day-to-day, Richard, what are some non-negotiables for you to ensure you own the day?
I think there's probably a few things. Is a little bit of physical action. You know, swimming, cycling, walking. Julia is very active, so that's motivational. Julia and I talk a lot about what we're doing. So one of the things I thought I was going to miss from council is bouncing ideas around. I learn from speaking, so engaging with people. So I try to ring a couple of mates, have a conversation, and at the last resort, I will pick up the paper, have a read, and do some research type stuff as well. Read a lot. Talk to people a lot, network with people a lot. I love the evolution. One good thing that comes out of COVID is the whole concept of video conferencing. It has its downsides. The whole of video conferencing as a legitimate tool to meet people has been great for everyone that's keen to meet new people and learn what they do. You know, my email in my LinkedIn post that you responded to, Luke, I've got 2 people offshore that want to hook up and have a conversation. I had a rocket scientist in Chicago wanting to talk to me about whether I could do some consulting for his business. But then when I looked at how much my professional indemnity insurance was going to cost, I said no. I was going to be out of this world doing some work remotely based in Chicago.
Love
you know,
that.
but it's just amazing that, you know, networking is great. LinkedIn's great. I learned a lot from Julia and her absolute drive to put quality content out. So I spent a lot of time with her as well.
That's good. Out of the rocket scientist and the Luke Farr show reaching out, what was more? What were you more taken back by?
The skincare comment. Although I do suggest you could have briefed me on it beforehand. I could have actually said, actually, this product here.
No. That would be everything I'm against. I'm all about authenticity. That's the ethos of the show. So
yeah, awesome.
I like to keep people on their toes. We're well, very much. It's a Joe Rogan scenario. It's like hit record. There's no, there's no pre-fluff, and it's organic as possibly can be, and that's why it's grown into what it is today. Because people know that the content that they're getting is not pre-scripted, it's not commercialized. It's just natural, raw conversations that help the youth of today, and that's the premise of the show. But Richard, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for coming on. Yep, you're an absolute weapon. And I mean, not only myself learning from you, but there'll be many people watching that will learn from you. But thank you in all sincerity for coming on.
Cool. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks for your time. Let me just hit stop.